The Mask wasn't just a goofy 90s comedy, it turned a dark, violent comic into a family-friendly live-action spectacle that launched careers and redefined visual effects comedy. These are 15 hidden details you completely missed in The Mask. Number 15. The movie comes from a Dark Horse comic series that was far more violent and nihilistic than the film adaptation, with the original Mask transforming wearers into murderous psychopaths rather than mischievous entertainers. The comic book version featured graphic violence and horror elements that would have earned an R rating if faithfully adapted. Screenwriter Mike Werb studied the source material, but chose comedy over horror to expand audience reach. Director Chuck Russell referenced classic Tex Avery cartoons instead of the comic's dark psychological horror, creating a film that honored the supernatural premise while rejecting the original's disturbing violence. The producer worked closely with New Line Cinema to ensure the tone shift would appeal to families. Watch scenes that nod to comic panel absurdity, like the bullet dodging sequences and exaggerated physical transformations. Number 14. Jim Carrey was not a massive movie star yet when cast in early 1993, and his casting was considered risky for a lead superhero role requiring both physical comedy and romantic leading man qualities. Studio executives at New Line Cinema questioned whether Carrey could carry a major feature film after primarily appearing in supporting television roles. Casting director Fern Champion recognized Carrey's untapped potential and championed him throughout the selection process. His performance redefined the character's tone from timid to chaotic, with improvisation that rewrote scenes during filming. The gamble paid off spectacularly when Ace Ventura: Pet Detective released 3 months before The Mask in February 1994, turning Carrey into a bankable star. Director Chuck Russell defended the choice, seeing Carrey's physical comedy background as essential for bringing cartoon energy to live action. Number 13. Principal photography began August 30th, 1993 and ended in October, with all filming conducted around Los Angeles locations, standing in for the fictional Edge City rather than building elaborate studio sets. The production schedule ran approximately 8 weeks, keeping costs manageable while capturing authentic urban nighttime aesthetics. Cinematographer John R. Leonetti used practical locations extensively, lighting LA streets to create the film noir atmosphere director Chuck Russell wanted. The Orpheum Theater in downtown Los Angeles served as the Coco Bongo interior, providing authentic 1920s architecture that enhanced the retro nightclub aesthetic. The location manager secured diverse shooting sites across Los Angeles under tight scheduling constraints. Watch exterior shots of the police station and Coco Bongo Club, showing real LA landmarks dressed as the fictional downtown setting. Number 12. Cameron Diaz had only a few days to prepare for the role after landing it just 7 days before shooting began, making her casting one of the latest major role decisions in the production timeline. The model-turned-actress had no prior film experience and beat out hundreds of experienced actresses auditioning for the female lead. Casting director Fern Champion championed Diaz despite her inexperience after seeing her natural charisma during auditions. Diaz worked with acting coach Roy London during the rushed preparation period to develop the character and build confidence. Cinematographer John R. Leonetti framed her first Coco Bongo entrance to maximize impact and showcase her star quality. Watch how her presence shifts lighting and camera focus in that pivotal scene, establishing Tina Carlisle as both glamorous and approachable to audiences. Number 11. The giant mask teeth were initially meant to be used only in silent, exaggerated shots where dialogue wouldn't be necessary, as producers worried audiences couldn't understand speech through the prosthetic appliance. The oversized dental piece was uncomfortable and restricted Jim Carrey's mouth movements significantly, making clear dialogue technically challenging for extended sequences. Makeup designer Greg Canham created multiple versions of the teeth prosthetic for different scene requirements throughout production. Carrey trained with dialect coach Robert Easton to maintain clarity while wearing the restrictive prosthetic during dialogue scenes. Director Chuck Russell initially agreed with limiting the teeth, but changed his approach after seeing Carrey's commitment to performing full dialogue scenes. Watch moments where Carrey talks while wearing the teeth, a choice he pushed for because he believed the absurd comedy increased when conversations continued. Number 10. Director Chuck Russell said Jim Carrey's expressive physicality reduced the need for expensive digital effects because his body movement delivered cartoonish energy without requiring extensive computer-generated enhancements. Carrey's background in physical comedy and mime training allowed him to contort his body in ways that sold impossible cartoon physics through performance rather than pure visual effects. visual effects supervisor Scott Squires from Industrial Light and Magic noted that Carrey's performance gave them a foundation to enhance rather than create from scratch, significantly reducing production costs. Carrey studied classic animation with Chuck Jones' disciples to understand cartoon timing and movement principles. Watch early transformation scenes that lean heavily on Carrey's movement rather than CGI, with his elastic facial expressions and body language creating cartoon reality through acting. Number 9. New Line Cinema executives reportedly wanted to remove the Cuban Pete musical sequence because they feared it didn't fit the movie's tone and would slow narrative momentum during the critical second act. The elaborate choreographed number required significant production resources, including hiring professional dancers and securing additional shooting time at the Orpheum Theater location. Director Chuck Russell fought to keep the sequence, arguing it showcased showmanship abilities essential to the character's appeal. Choreographer Jerry Evans worked extensively with Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz to perfect the dance moves and timing for the extended musical interlude. Watch how visually elaborate the nightclub set is, with costume designer Han Nguyen creating period-accurate zoot suits and swing-era wardrobe that enhance the retro aesthetic perfectly. Number 8. Chuck Russell referenced Tex Avery-style cartoon exaggeration when shaping expressions and abilities, aiming for live-action cartoon physics that honored Golden Age animation's anarchic energy and visual impossibility. Russell studied classic Warner Brothers and MGM cartoons extensively during pre-production, noting how characters' eyes popped, jaws dropped, and bodies stretched in reaction to stimuli. Production designer Craig Stearns incorporated bright primary colors in costume and environment to evoke animation's vibrant palette that contrasted with the darker noir aesthetic. Visual effects supervisor Scott Squires worked to translate hand-drawn animation principles into digital effects that felt authentically cartoonish. Russell consulted with animator Chuck Jones about maintaining cartoon logic in live-action format. Watch elastic, impossible movements that mimic old animation logic, including the heart pounding out of the chest when seeing beauty. Number 7. Original early drafts contained dark, violent scenes and conceptual ideas like a horror mask maker character before shifting dramatically to comedy during multiple rewrites by different screenwriters over several years. Initial script versions by Mike Werb stayed closer to the Dark Horse Comics' psychological horror roots, featuring a protagonist who struggled with the mask's corrupting influence. Director Chuck Russell collaborated with producer Bob Engelman to lighten the tone progressively as they recognized the commercial potential of family-friendly comedy over niche horror. Writer Mark Verheiden contributed to early drafts before the tone shift toward broader comedy. The final shooting script balanced remnants of the darker premise with the predominantly comedic tone that made the film accessible to broad audiences. Watch transformation sequences that retain slightly unsettling body horror elements beneath the slapstick surface. Number 6. Jim Carrey said he based parts of Stanley Ipkiss's everyman charm and people-pleasing tendencies on his own father's nice guy persona, drawing from childhood observations of how decent people get overlooked. Percy Carey worked as an accountant and musician, embodying the kind-hearted working person whose talents went underappreciated, a dynamic Carey wanted to capture in the pre-transformation characterization. Director Chuck Russell encouraged Carey to bring personal elements into the role during character development discussions before principal photography began in late summer 1993. Acting coach Roy London helped Carey access emotional vulnerability for Stanley's quieter moments. The performance adds emotional depth to what could have been a one-dimensional loser character. Watch Carey's subtle facial expressions when Stanley is mistreated, showing genuine hurt beneath the awkward smiles and forced politeness. Number 5. Early concepts had the female lead as a more duplicitous figure who manipulated Stanley for personal gain, but after Cameron Diaz's casting, the role was rewritten to be more genuinely sympathetic and romantically sincere. Original script versions featured a femme fatale archetype closer to classic film noir, using her relationship with both antagonist and protagonist strategically without real emotional investment. Screenwriter Mike Werb adjusted dialogue and motivation after Cameron Diaz brought natural warmth to the role during early rehearsals with director Chuck Russell. Producer Bob Engelman supported the character changes that made Tina more relatable to audiences. The changes made the character an active participant in her own story who chooses Stanley authentically, giving the romance genuine emotional stakes. Watch Cameron Diaz's reactions in scenes where she's tempted but ultimately loyal, showing internal conflict. Number 4. Industrial Light and Magic and Dream Quest compressed images handled visual effects collaboratively, blending digital work with practical props like oversized mallets, squeezable rubber triggers, and physical comedy rigs that Jim Carrey manipulated on set before digital enhancement. The hybrid approach created more convincing cartoon physics than pure CGI could achieve with mid-1990s technology limitations, grounding impossible actions in tangible physical performance. Special effects coordinator Steve Johnson built mechanical rigs for on-set gags that gave actors something physical to react to rather than empty green screen environments. Visual effects supervisor Scott Squires coordinated between multiple effects, houses working on different sequences simultaneously under tight deadlines. Watch layers of practical props in the fight sequences that CGI then enhanced, including the extending tongue and the weapons pulled from nowhere. Number 3. The year 1994 was an unprecedented breakout where Carrey simultaneously starred in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber, 3 films that collectively grossed over $600 million worldwide and made him the biggest comedy star in Hollywood virtually overnight. The compressed timeline meant Carrey barely finished promoting one film before the next released, creating sustained media presence throughout the entire year. Each film showcased different aspects of his talent with distinct directorial visions from Tom Shadyac, Chuck Russell, and Peter Farrelly respectively, proving Carrey could adapt to various comedic styles. Agent Nick Stevens negotiated unprecedented salary increases between each film's release. The triple success made Carrey one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood almost immediately, transforming the industry's understanding of comedy box office potential. Number 2. The film contributed significantly to a resurgence of interest in retro music and swing aesthetics in the 1990s, fed partly by the Coco Bongo nightclub vibe and zoot suit costuming that reintroduced vintage style to younger audiences. The soundtrack featured big band music and swing standards that contrasted sharply with grunge and alternative rock dominating 1990s youth culture. Costume designer Han Nguyen created the iconic yellow zoot suit that became instantly recognizable and frequently imitated in Halloween costumes and pop culture references. Music supervisor Michael Dilbeck curated period-authentic tracks that enhanced the retro atmosphere throughout the film. Watch the Cuban Pete sequence that showcased swing dancing choreographed by Jerry Evans with period-authentic movements and energy that captured the era's spirit perfectly. Number 1. With a production budget of approximately $23 million and a $350 million worldwide gross, The Mask became one of the most profitable comic adaptations ever at the time, proving comic properties could generate massive returns without established superhero recognition. The film's success helped legitimize comic book source material beyond traditional superhero properties, opening Hollywood's eyes to diverse comic adaptations. Producer Bob Engelman and New Line Cinema executives were shocked by the film's sustained box office performance through late summer 1994. Studio head Michael DeLuca championed the project despite initial skepticism about the unconventional premise. The profitability ratio demonstrated that modest budgets combined with creative vision could outperform expensive blockbusters, influencing studio investment strategies for comic adaptations and launching both Jim Carrey's stardom and Cameron Diaz's career simultaneously. The Mask blends slapstick, romance, comic adaptation, animation influences, and physical performance into an iconic film that still resonates. Chuck Russell's vision combined with Jim Carrey's breakthrough performance created something that transcended its comic book origins and defined 1990s comedy. Which hidden detail surprised you most, and what film should we open next?